Welcome to the future of work. This is the live stream where we talk about how forward-thinking organizations use Giant to take their organizations to the next level. I'm Bronson Taylor, the CEO of Giant, and with me as always is Mike Oppedahl, our president. How are you doing today, Mike?
I'm doing very well, but how are you doing? I mean, I watched your Heat last night for as long as I could take it. Do you have any comments about how your Heat played against the Lakers last night?
Here's all I'm going to say. We swept the Pacers. We eliminated the Bucks, which were the Eastern Conference #1 seed, and we got by a very tough Boston team. To win the Eastern Conference is really an accomplishment, and I'm super proud of our guys. And yes, they got absolutely demolished last night by the King. But he wouldn't be called the King if he didn't bring it like that.
That's right, dude. So here's my thought. So tomorrow night, they got game 2. My thinking is this: they can probably pull off a game 2. You get that fight in you. You realize, hey, we can't go down 2-0. It seems like they have a chance to win tomorrow night, but I don't know. When you look at the series, I'm like, you're the one who told me they said if everything goes the Heat's way, they'll only lose in 5 versus in 4. So
well, here's the problem. Also, we probably lost a few starters last night. So Bam is probably injured. Adebayo's injured, or as Bam. Dragic is injured. Butler is hurt. I mean, we're playing with our bench players right now. But, I still think we can pull off a game. We'll see what happens. So, anyway, enough about the Heat. No one cares about any of that. So, today we're going to dig back in to going through a team exercise. But let's put this in perspective again. Organizations come to us and they say, we need help. And they really need help around 3 critical areas. They want better leaders. They want healthier cultures. And they want to improve their productivity, their performance, right? And those are really the 3 areas: better leaders and better culture, and just more performance. And one of the things we do is we implement the Invincible operating system. We say, you know what? We actually have a plan for this. We know how to get more out of your people. We know how to unlock your people, is the way we say it. And one of the things we do as a part of our process when we implement that operating system is we do a monthly team exercise. It's not the only thing we do. We do some one-on-one stuff with leaders. We have some on-demand training that people are going through on their own. We have some, more org-wide people summit stuff. But every month, there's a team exercise for the team to go through. And that exercise is based on what, Mike? How do we know which exercise to do this month as opposed to a different exercise?
Well, yeah, it's the assessment, right? So if the process has an assessment, a toolkit, and a process, then we take the assessment first to go, where are we at? So communication, relationships, alignment, execution, and capacity. We're assessing how are we doing, right? Knowing that the benchmark around the globe is 58% out of 100, right? It's a solid F. And so we take that assessment, we look at it, we don't get mad about it. We go, all right, now that we know that execution is poor, what are we going to do about it? So don't just tell me I'm sick. Tell me how to diagnose it and figure out how to get better. So we'll actually look at that and go, what do we want to do to improve our execution?
Absolutely. So let's say we're an organization and execution is low, right? Maybe they're okay on relationships. They're okay on communication. They're aligned. All the other things are fine. They have the capacity, but they're just not executing. They're not getting done what they're supposed to get done. Expectations are not being met. There's a lot of exercises we could do. Today, what's the name of the exercise that we're actually going to go through with this invisible team that we're talking about?
We're going to talk about the X factor. So that's the reality. So like you said, there's a lot of things you can do. And we actually have, over 60 tools, as you know, in the toolkit, Bronson. And there's a lot of stuff we could do. But we start with the simple stuff, right? Like there's been some version of this kind of tool has existed for a long time. Covey called it the 4 quadrants. It doesn't matter. You've got to figure out how to prioritize the tasks on your plate and get the right stuff done. Every team has to do that to execute on the things that really matter so you can actually improve performance.
Totally. So we're actually going to get into this tool, ask some questions to each other about it. But first, without even thinking about the tool, try to be honest. It's hard because we know, how these things work, but Try to be honest. I want to ask this question for you. Do you feel like you get to spend your time, energy, and resources on the things that are most important and urgent? Or are there better ways you could be using your time to help your team? So I want you to actually answer that from Mike Oppedahl perspective. Do you feel like you get to focus on important and urgent? Or is there this nagging feeling in the back of your mind that I should probably be focused on something else? This isn't the best use of my time.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm honest, I'm always trying to optimize and maximize my time. And the truth is, I have this tendency as a guardian pioneer I have a tendency to get tunnel vision on, and I just go to execute everything. I get a task list of 1,000 things. I've got all these Slack messages. I got all these emails. I'm like, I just got to check off every single one of these boxes. So if I'm honest, no, I can absolutely improve how I use my time. And as we get through into this tool, I'll tell you, like, I think there's a lot more important things I could be doing sometimes, but I'm actually just stuck doing things that are highly urgent and maybe not as important.
Yeah, no, that's great. For me, it's almost kind of the flip, which is why we're such a good team.
Yeah.
I'll want to focus on what is the most important thing ever, right? But then if it's urgent, it's like, I don't like responding to urgent stuff. I like dealing with the biggest, most important thing I can possibly imagine, like meaning of life, existential stuff. I don't want to deal with like the thing happening right now that really matters. And so that's my growth area, to focus on urgent and important and not just important. So let's get into a little bit here. Yeah, Cindy Clarkin says, great tool, Eisenhower Matrix. Like Mike said, there's versions of this from different people. The idea is a lot of people focus on the wrong stuff day to day. They do a lot of activity. It's not because people are lazy always, right? Sometimes it may be. A lot of times it isn't. A lot of times people have a lot of activity, but they don't have accomplishment. I would say when you have a lot of activity and very little accomplishment, it's probably because you're doing things in the wrong quadrant, not because you're a bad person. And as a team leader, that's a big insight, isn't it, Mike?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing is, so when every single day we have a new list of tasks to do, like, it's not like you're doing this, even if you have a job that has like a process and you do the same thing day in and day out, there's different factors of who's involved, what happened. Today there's an issue with the thing, yesterday there wasn't. So there's always new inputs being thrown at you. So to say that anyone's figured out how to maximize the use of their time is ridiculous. It's just not true. So our job every day as leaders is we have to wake up and as contributors and go, all right, today I've got some things on my calendar. Have I prioritized the things that are right? Are the right things in there? Is there anything I can move? Should I delegate something? Like, these are the questions we've got to be asking every single day to ensure we actually spend our time wisely.
Yeah. So this is a tool that's going to almost be a litmus test for what should we be working on. It's a filter. It's a mirror to make sure we're working on the right stuff. So Mike, teach us this tool at kind of a high level, and then we'll dig into the details of how to make sure we really prioritize correctly.
Yeah, right. So like was said before by Cindy, I think the Eisenhower Matrix, right? You've got the quadrants, whatever. The reality is that we have highly urgent and highly important things, and we have low importance and low urgency when it comes to the items and tasks we have. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we've got the task, first of all, put in the right part of the matrix, but then we have to say, all right, what am I going to do about this, right? So when something's highly urgent and highly important, am I focused? Like, do I have the focus to get this thing done? Bronson, we were on a stand-up today, and we had an issue with our technology, didn't we?
Yes.
And so did we need to focus on that issue that was at hand? Did we have people who were literally going to meetings with clients who needed our help right then?
Yes, it was highly urgent.
Right? And highly important.
And highly important.
Impacting lots of clients, right? Okay, so then let's move around the matrix. Something could be highly important, but it's not urgent. So this is, do I have a plan for this, right? This is that quadrant 2 stuff. Like, am I actually focused on the things? It's highly important, but it's not urgent today, right? So, and as a matter of fact, Bronson, I know what you were working on before our stand-up. I would say what you were working on, the team kickstart, which is powerful. That's highly important. It's not necessarily urgent. Like, again, it's going to be massive when it comes, but no one's like, under our thumb or clients screaming about it. They don't even know how cool it's going to be yet. So the reality was you were working on something highly important with low urgency, and you got pulled into highly urgent, highly important. Is that right?
That's absolutely right. Yeah.
So let's move around. So things can be low urgency and low importance. And can anyone else do this? Right. So if I look at my calendar today, it's like, why am I doing that? Like, is there someone else who could actually do this? Could I delegate this and actually move up? One of the best things highly successful people do is they figure out what only they can do, and they focus their time there. So you have to ask, if something's low important and low urgent, let's like, can someone else take care of this? It's got to get done, but can someone else do it? And then finally, if something's highly urgent and low importance, it's like, can I afford not to do this? Right? So it's like, hey, this seems urgent, but it's actually not that important. Right? And Bronson, I know you don't like this, but oftentimes our clients, our customers, even our employees, they try to make something really urgent and almost like this false sense of urgency, but we're like, that doesn't really even matter. It's not that important. Is that fair?
Absolutely. No, and it goes back to the whole thing is like, I tend toward importance and not urgence. And so when somebody wants to say something is urgent, you have to do it now, I'm like, my first answer is no, maybe I don't. That's not always the right answer, but that's where my mind goes. So Mike, this is a great breakdown for us. Thank you. it seems like the first step is just looking at your task and being able to put them in the correct categories. Would you say that's the first step to really utilizing this matrix?
Absolutely. And it might it might sound like, we're oversimplifying it. Well, we are. The first thing you do is write down all the stuff you got to get done, or even like, there's a lot of research about this. Like when you actually just take the time to brain dump onto a piece of paper, it's cathartic, and it literally helps you be more productive just by writing down all the stuff in your brain. Mm-hmm. So the first thing is you got to make a list. Then you got to figure out, where does this fit inside the matrix? And oftentimes we need help. So I know we're getting into this in the exercise, Bronson, but oftentimes we need the folks around us to help us put them in the right quadrant.
Yeah, no, that's great. So let's actually talk about the different quadrants a little bit, talk about some of the insights there, and then maybe talk about what you just said, how we can help each other, because I don't know if any one person has figured this out. I think our personality drags us into different quadrants naturally, and it makes a team can really pull us through, but I don't know if an individual can. So let's start with the lowest one, low importance, low urgency. And the question is, can anyone else do this? When I look at this, tell me if I'm wrong, Mike, this seems like it's one step away from a hobby, right? It's low important, it's low urgent. It feels like it almost is just something you do in your own time that's fun. It's like, it might be a business thing, it might need to happen, but it's like, can anyone else do this? Is this really for me? How would you best describe low important and low urgent things?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is, so again, I would use email. Like we talked about this on our last call, but basically, like when other people reach out to you and interrupt you and try to tell you like something, and then you look at it and you go, wait a minute, not only was it not urgent that I looked at that email, but it also wasn't important to do, right? It could be like someone trying to sell you something. Like yesterday, I was on LinkedIn because a lot of people are trying to do business with us on LinkedIn, and there's a guy reach out to me to say, hey, I want to do a session for you on wealth management, and I'm like, and so, but it like popped up, it interrupted me. Like I looked at it, instead of doing the work that I wanted to be working on, I was looking at that. And the reality is I don't need his services. Now I get everyone's got to build a business, but that like throughout our day, think about how many things interrupt us. They're not that important and they're not urgent. Absolutely. And yet they get our attention.
Absolutely. Tell me if I'm wrong. It seems like a certain kind of person might be drawn to these tasks. And let me explain what I think that person is, right? So low importance, it's hard to deal with the really important stuff. It's hard to have the big picture. It's hard to think, where do I actually deliver the most value? Because something's at stake. If something's really important, something's at stake. So when you focus on something of low importance, nothing's at stake. Even if you mess up, it's not a big deal. Even if you do it well, it's not a big deal. It's just not that important. So you're kind of off the radar. Same thing with low urgency. Low urgency means nobody's mad about it. Nobody's yelling for you to fix it. It's not urgent. There's no fire. So when you're drawn to low importance and low urgency, it might be that you don't want to be in the middle of things. You don't want to have to deal with something important. You don't want to have to deal with a customer or a client that is angry about something that's urgent or something that really needs to be fixed now. It almost feels like escapism if you live too much in low importance and low urgency. Is that fair?
That's dead on. As a matter of fact, you made me think of something. Years ago, I was a fan of Brian Tracy. He's like a sales guru guy. And he was talking about, he had this thing called Eat That Frog. And what he was saying was, psychologically, things that are really important that need to get done, we put them off. We literally intentionally procrastinate them. It's subconscious. So he said, whenever you got the most important thing to do, he says, eat that frog, which means do it first thing in the morning. Like if you're going to have to eat a frog today, get it out of the way. So, but you're right, Bronson. I think all of us actually, we don't like feeling like, hey, I had to work on something super important, because there's a lot at stake with what you said there.
Yeah. I would even say that in some ways, this is a barometer of your leadership potential, right? The more you're willing to run toward urgent and important things, urgent and important situations, urgent and important decisions, the more likely you will be to lead and lead at a higher level.
Yeah. No question. No, you're absolutely right. The more, again, more responsibility, more importance you're willing to take on. And then, dealing with those highly urgent things that are tough, like making those hard decisions in a time where you got clients screaming and yelling, right?
Yeah. And I hate to be this blunt about it, but people watch this to like really get the raw that, if someone only deals with things that are low importance and low urgency, they're more replaceable than other people. And that's just the reality of organizations, right? I mean, when we go into a climate like COVID and people are being laid off and, the stock market's going crazy, you want to build value, personal value that you bring to the team. I would say a quick win is to focus on things that are more important, focus on things that are more urgent, and you're probably going to be more valuable to your team and future-proof your position there. Pepper says, love sharing this tool with people I get to serve. Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, this is one of those tools where instant impact. It's like support challenge matrix. You see it, you can't unsee it. It's simple. It's a matrix, and it just changes how you view what you're doing. So yes, that's a great question. Can anyone else do this? Sometimes you're the lowest person on the totem pole, and nope, it's your job. This is what you do. Here's what I would say. If you're the lowest one on the totem pole and you're stuck with low importance and low urgency task, if you can build up some slack, build up some capacity in your day to then go and focus on something a little more urgent or important, even though no one asked you to, and then come back and say, hey, I did all the low important, low urgency stuff, but I had an extra hour because I worked really hard. Here's what I thought through. I think this might fix a bigger problem of ours. That's how you really build value in a team, right, Mike?
No question. And I would say always be asking the leader, hey, what is highly important and highly urgent to our team right now, right? So even just asking that question, that you show the leader and the team, frankly, that you care about how well you guys perform as a unit.
Yeah, this is something I don't know if a lot of people realize. They don't know how senior leadership views the organization. When we wake up, we only get to be bothered with urgent and important things. Yeah. I mean, it's just nonstop all day, right? Now, I'm not saying we don't do some things that are low important or low urgency. We get sucked into this too. But as a general rule, we don't even have the chance to choose the other quadrants because we are being thrust in urgent and important situations just kind of nonstop by virtue of how we serve. So the people that we work with, the easier they can make our urgent task, the easier they can make our important task, their value rises. We see, okay, they're seeing the world from our point of view. They're not focusing on the details that just don't matter. They're focusing on something big, even though they didn't have to. That's how they really come alive in our eyes. Would you disagree with that, Mike?
No, you're absolutely right, Bronson. It really is. And so I always say, when I was young in my career, I remember a mentor told me, always make your boss look good. So here's the reality, like take the time to find out what matters to your boss, collaborate with them. And to your point, Bronson, like help make their job easier. Hey, this was important. This was urgent. I want to help. I want to do my part to assist in it.
Yeah. Scott says, I love this tool. Put the thought work in before you execute, and you will be set up for success. There's pre-production. You look at any movie, there's pre-production, production, and then post-production. Pre-production is writing the script. Do we have the right cast? Who's going to be the director? Production is hit record, you guys act. And then post-production is editing, special effects, distribution, marketing. A lot of people just want to do production. They wake up and they're like, all right, here we are. Let's just do. The pre-production makes sure you're even shooting the right movie. It makes sure you have the right director. The pre-production is putting your task in these quadrants so that you're actually doing the right stuff. So I love that. All right, let's talk about another quadrant here. Highly urgent, but low importance. All right, so something is very urgent, but it's low importance. And the question you ask is, can I afford not to do this? Give us an example or help us really unpack high urgent, low importance here.
Yeah, and I'll just give you an example. So I'm not saying this happened, but like, let's say we have guides and consultants all over the world, and we're serving them to serve their clients and unlock their potential and get their teams to all be invincible. And that's what we do. I get Slack messages every single day. Every once in a while, I might get a Slack message from one of our guides or consultants that says, hey, I need this thing right now, right? And in their world, it's highly, highly, highly urgent, right? But in the grand scheme of things, it may not be the most important thing for our business. And you said, Bronson, we're raw on this show and we want to like really help people. The reality is that when we interrupt folks and tell them something's highly urgent, we have to understand their perspective. Bronson, you and I had a really deep conversation about perspectives yesterday. So you have to think to yourself, hey, this thing might seem highly urgent based on the way the person's running around with their hair on fire, but it may not be that important to the business. And sometimes you got to make some hard decisions and say, that seems highly urgent, but it's not that important.
Yeah. And it seems like if leadership doesn't make a hard decision here, if something is brought to them that is, they're being told this is highly urgent, but they don't decide to think about it critically themselves, if they take on that stress and then put that stress back onto their team, you can actually take something that's low importance and now it's caught everyone's hair on fire and you've lost massive productivity. So I think as a leader, this is a dangerous quadrant here because you might need to focus on it and you might not need to focus on it. And this is like, the low importance, low urgency. Yeah, just try not to do it if you can get away with it, right? Like it's kind of clear what to do. This one, it's a little less clear. Maybe you should make a judgment call to focus on it. Maybe you shouldn't. But the danger is letting everyone feel the stress of it. What do you think about that, Mike? Is that a fair assessment of that category, that it could become dangerous?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. And that's, again, what great leaders, what great influencers do is they actually think they slow down long enough to make good decisions. I love Scott's comment and your stuff about pre-production. You really have to slow down. Don't just assume something is highly urgent, right? You have to actually take the time to go, okay, is it? And again, how important is this really?
Yep. So we have a comment from Brian that we're going to get to in just a minute, so you can leave that on the screen. But there's a question that came in from Marianne, and this is a great question, so I want to give it to you, Mike. She said, quote, "Can you briefly explain why the word serve is used so often in giant explanations?" So why are we drawn to the word serve?
Yeah, because in actually, I'm going to make a strong statement here. There was, a shtick for a long time. It was called servant leadership. And so people have talked about like the importance of servant leadership and what that means. What we found over time is that people turned servant leadership into doormat, into, hey, everyone can just walk all over me, like all this, like whatever. It was almost like a martyr thing. We believe that the best leaders in the world are liberators. They fight for the highest possible good in the lives of those they lead and influence. So a liberator does two things. They challenge and they support. They bring expectations and they serve in a really humble way. And so that's what it is, Marianne. It's the ethos of Giant. It's what we believe is the most powerful leadership in the world. We've seen it everywhere. When you bring high support and high challenge, when you serve people very deeply, but you also challenge them and call them up, you become a liberator.
Yeah, that's great. So Brian has a tactic here. We know Brian is a very systematic thinker. And so when he approaches a tool like this, he has a rhythm for how to do it. So I want to read what he said because this is so good. He said, when low tasks absolutely have to get done, meaning low urgent and low important, when they have to get done, restrict them to certain days or day so they don't bleed over into focus days. If it doesn't get done in the assigned day, by definition, it can wait until the next assigned day for doing low task. So really this gets at this idea of chunking. That's what I've always called it. Maybe you have a different name for it, Mike. I don't know.
Yeah, I call it batching.
Batching. Yeah, chunking, batching. It's the idea of taking like things and doing them together. So if you have a lot of low important, low urgent tasks, batch them together and do them every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Like you pick your time and day and location, but you just do them all at one time. Why is batching a productivity hack really above and beyond even what we're teaching in this tool? Because you could do this tool and still not batch. Why does batching matter? Taking like things and doing them at a similar point in time.
Yeah, and again, it's funny. Brian Fletcher and I years ago, we got into like getting things done and Evernote and all these different things were happening. But actually, we came across this idea called the Pomodoro. And basically the idea was the most productive people in the world would do at least 4 Pomodoros in a week. And a Pomodoro was only 25 minutes of focused work. And you hear that and you go, everyone does that. Then you start to think about it and you go, basically no one does it. So the idea of batching, Bronson, is again, there's psychology behind this, which says when you actually get truly focused on something, your productivity goes through the roof. Most people don't stay focused on a task for 25 minutes straight without any interruptions. And every interruption, they say it takes like 43 minutes. It was some weird number, like 43 minutes to get back into the zone, which makes no sense. So the reality is that batching helps you stay focused and literally it takes your productivity through the roof.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, if you have to check email and respond to a few voicemail messages and, call the dentist to set up the appointment for your kids, like, just do all that at one point in time. Don't do all this really important stuff and then interrupt it by setting up a dentist appointment. And then do some really important stuff and interrupt it by checking some emails because somebody wants to sell you something. Like batch that low stuff together and batch the other stuff. To your point about focus, I know it's so funny how this works. I'm really good at focus. I enjoy focus. 5th gear is my gear. I went yesterday for a walk because I needed to focus on something. So I take my giant notebook and I got my ink pen, and I walk to where the water is. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to spend a few minutes here really thinking through this problem and what the solution is. I felt like it was urgent and important and it needed me just a few minutes by the water. After 10 minutes, I just felt the urge to get up and walk back to my office. I'm like, no, I'm not done yet. I had to make myself keep focusing. And then after 20 minutes, I wanted to get up and just instinctively walk back to the office. I'm like, no, I'm not done solving this. I had to keep literally getting up and walking back to the table I was at. It's actually hard to focus on one thing, especially in the 21st century. We are being ripped apart in a million directions. The person who can focus wins because we have lost our collective ability to focus on almost anything, right?
Absolutely. And again, I don't know the exact numbers, but they say basically the most limited resource we have now is attention. They used to say it was your time. Now they say it's your attention, because there's, however many million data inputs we get in a single day that just distract us and take away our attention. You're right, Bronson. I mean, gosh, just focus alone will change the way you live, the way you work, the way that you do relationship, everything.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's go to the right side here. Something that is highly important, but low urgency. And you asked the question, do I have a plan for this? Why is that something worth planning for instead of just doing right now?
Yeah, well, I think it goes back to your and Scott's comments on pre-production. Like, this is the place where you really have to do the hard yards, because if you're going to go and get in fifth gear and work on a project and solve like a really hard business problem, you really have to. We always say that a problem well defined is half solved. So the reality is, when it comes to highly important but it's not urgent, you got to slow down and take the time to actually define it really well, so that you can actually solve it. What I typically do, Bronson, is I get some inputs. I move really quickly in my thinking and with my mouth. Everyone listening goes, yeah, this guy talks way too fast. My brain spins faster. And I go, hey, I've got a good idea. Let's just do it. I don't take the time to plan and do pre-production. So we make a little bit of progress, but then it comes back around. You see what I'm saying? Like, I don't actually take the time to truly solve it and put a system around it so that it can be solved into the future.
Yeah. And that comes back to working with people that are built slightly differently, right? I know that's the way you think. You think really fast, much faster than I do. You get there as soon as I start talking. I don't need to finish the sentence, whatever we're talking about, right? But then I have to take that input and say, okay, let me do some pre-production. Let me make sure this is strategic. It might be right, but let's just make sure. And you and I together, we get there really fast and really strategically, where either of us out of the equation, we'd miss one of those, I think. I wouldn't get there as fast, and you wouldn't get there strategically, but together it's a really good duo. Do you see that with teams, that when people really lean on each other's strengths in this and other areas, that they're able to do more as a whole than the sum of the parts?
No question, Bronson. This is why, too, this exercise is so important, because we're literally doing this live like we do every week, and we're being raw. But, like, I need you to help me think more strategically. Like, that's actually a superpower of yours, and I need you to share that power with me for me to be at my best. And by the way, I'm just being honest. If I had another Tracy's in the background, always doing her thing, being awesome. Tracy's another guardian pioneer like me. Tracy and I are not the best for each other to help solve time management issues, because we think the same way. We both make a list of 5,000 things and smash them. We think that's awesome, and we do, and people love us for doing it. But the reality is, I need someone different from me to help me see a new perspective to get me to my highest level.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's like you can actually find success doing things incorrectly, right? So It's like you can brute force your way to success. You really can. Yes. I mean, if you build a to-do list long enough, there's enough things on it that mattered that you're probably going to win, right? Yeah. So that's one way to actually approach it. It's not efficient, but it's a way to approach it. There's another way, which is if you're really strategic, you could probably be super lazy and win, because you don't have to do much. You just did the right thing. Most people aren't so purely strategic. They know the one thing to focus on, and they're not able to brute force it because they don't have the energy to do enough to overcome the lack of strategy. Most people need a blend of strategy and production to probably end up in a successful place. All right, let's talk about the top quadrant. It's highly urgent and highly important. In a lot of ways, it's the exact opposite of low. Instead of it being unimportant and not urgent, it's like, no, this is really urgent and it's really important. And the question there is, am I focused here? So now we're not talking about a future plan. We're not talking about, can we afford to do it? It's not even up for debate. It's not trying to delegate it to someone else. Can someone else do this at the bottom? This is like, is this your focus? Why is that the question for this quadrant?
Because you actually have to focus on and get it done. It's important. It matters to you. It matters to the team. It matters to the business, and it's highly urgent. So I'll go back to our example from this morning. If you, as a CEO, you're on a stand-up with your team, and you're like, hey, I'm really excited about this team kickstart. It's going to be the coolest thing we've ever done. And I agree with you. The problem is, if you stay on that in the midst of our people needing us because they got something going on with the technology, like, you haven't focused on the right thing. Like, that might have been highly important, but it was low urgency. So when you've got high importance and high urgency at the same time, you've got to take the time to focus and get the thing done.
Well, and that's why we move so fast, is because, so this is a real example from this morning. We were on a meeting about something else. Yeah. Someone in Slack said, hey, this isn't working, and I got a meeting in 20 minutes. Mike instantly responded to it in Slack, And within 30 seconds, I stopped the meeting and what we were talking about, and I got both developers to interact, even though this wasn't a development meeting. If we need to interact for a long time, we would have. And they interacted. We had a real solution in real time. They implemented it with a hot fix, and then we could move on. It would have hurt us, and it would have hurt us more and more in the future if we didn't have that mentality. Because Mike and I have to be able to say, you know what, if it's urgent and important, we're just going to focus on it. Now, here's a question. Mike, if you find yourself almost inundated nonstop with no gaps and everything is urgent and important, one, is that how you burn out? And two, does that mean you need to have more capacity and grow your team and train other people? What is that an indicator of? Or is it actually, no, that means you're doing what you're supposed to, make sure you're taking breaks, but everything you do should be highly urgent and highly important. How do you come down on that? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, here's the honest truth. If everything's important, nothing is. So you can't tell me if you put 10 things down on your paper, you can't convince me they're all the most important thing, because then nothing's important. That's like by definition. Yeah. So number one, you've got to be able to rank importance of things. And to your point, a lot of people live this way, Bronson. It's like highly urgent, highly important all the time, fighting fires absolutely leads to burnout. I would say that it's like probably the number one indicator of burnout, right? Like most people don't get burnt out when they're just doing a bunch of low important, low urgency stuff and sitting around. They're usually bored, right? Yeah. So the reality is people burn out or feel like they need escapism or whatever. That happens because, dude, I felt like everything today was super important. I felt like I was on the hook a lot. It was, everyone was like needing my attention. You ever get to the end of the day and go, what did I do today? Because you're just putting out fires. And so, yeah, we know, again, it's the old adage, the firefighting mentality, but you got to stay away from that and you will burn out. Not a matter of if, it's when. All of us have the end of our energy, right? People call me the Energizer Bunny. It's like, there's a point where like I'm at the end of my rope. So I got to be careful not to get stuck in the highly urgent, highly important. Got to slow down and take time to actually do the pre-production, find out what's important and work on the right stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. As we're going through this, I'm having realizations about myself. I do a pretty good job at staying in urgent and important. I could do better, but I do a lot there. When I need escape, I move to the right into high important, low urgency, because a strategic brain just wants to play. And for me, it's fun to say what's important, but doesn't have to get done today, because then nobody is like in my ear needing it now. It's not urgent. It's not on a to-do list. I get to actually conceptualize and architect something without any noise in my system while I do it. So I actually move over to the right to do stuff that doesn't matter today, but it matters in 3 and 6 months. It's actually fun for me. Like nothing's going to break if I don't do it today, but I need it almost as an escape. Like I don't want to stay in high urgent, high important 24/7. So I move over for a few minutes or 30 minutes here and there into the right quadrant. And then if I stay too long in the left quadrant, I get stressed. If I'm in the high urgent, low important, I just like start breaking down. And it's like, so for me, it's almost like I could draw a circle around this where it goes from green to red. And then when I get to low urgent and low important, I'm death. Like, I don't see the point. I can't even begin to like care. Why are we here? I mean, it's a funny joke. Like, I actually in the last few years have forced myself to enjoy basketball, because I'm like, you know what? I need to do something low important, low urgent that isn't just changing the world. So I force myself, all right, pick a team, the Heat, great. Act like you care about them. All right, let's care about them. So I make myself get into it because my natural self just doesn't even have that outlet, right? So for me, it's like I could just draw a thing around from like red to green of how healthy I am. Is that normal? Do you think a lot of people feel really comfortable in some quadrants and need to escape to the other ones for periods of time?
Absolutely. I bet everyone has their own version of that story, but it's going to be different. And as a matter of fact, Tracy put up, you can go to giant.tv and go to the boot camp. And this is huge, Bronson, because I could tell you, based on what we know about, true personality type, I could tell you that a pioneer creative like you would be really good at highly important, low urgent things. Mm-hmm. Those things that are really going to change the world, but they're not urgent today. And I can tell you that you would also be frustrated as a pioneer creative with doing a bunch of pointless things that don't make a difference and that no one cares about. Like, I can tell you that. Whereas, by the way, Pioneer Guardian, we actually thrive in highly urgent, highly important. We like to give us the information, give us the data, what's going on, what do we need to do? Like, we actually thrive on that. So if you do a boot camp, you'll find out, Bronson, that there's different true personality types, different true voices that want to go to different parts of this quadrant.
Yeah, that's great. So you heard Mike mention the boot camp. Just to zoom back for a minute, companies come to us, organizations come to us, and they say, you know what? We want better leaders, not necessarily more leaders. We need better leaders. We want a healthier culture. We want to improve the performance of our teams. And we say, great, we have an invincible operating system that we can implement and actually get you those things. It's a proven process to build up the performance of your teams and your culture and your leadership. You may be asking, well, what's the first step, right? The first step is not the exercise we just did today. We're just giving you a glimpse behind the scenes of something, one of the many things your teams would go through. The first step is actually the 5 Voices Bootcamp. So if you're watching this in our Ascend product, at the top of the screen, you're going to see a button that says Free 5 Voices Bootcamp. Go ahead and click that, and it's going to tell you everything you need to know to get that first free bootcamp. If you're not on Ascend, if you're on Facebook, LinkedIn, somewhere else that we're streaming to, go to giant.tv, create your free account. At the top of the screen, you're going to see a button called Free 5 Voices Bootcamp. Click that, and it's going to tell you what you need to do. And we just put on the screen here, if you want your free account, go to giant.tv/free account is another way. And when you do that 5 Voices Bootcamp, you're going to learn a lot about yourself and your own personality and your own tendencies and your own wiring. You're also going to learn about how your teammates think, how they perceive the world, how they view things. And when you see a tool like this in the future, you're going to be like, I have more insight than is actually on this tool. So you can look at someone like Mike and be like, okay, because of who he is, he's high and urgent, high important. You can look at me and be like, okay, because of who Bronson is, he's high important, but maybe low urgency tendencies. You can see how we actually view the world, and then you can put together a team and build a team to the next level. Mike, do you have anything to add on the 5 Voice Bootcamp, the X Factor, the Invincible Operating System, or anything else? I'll give you the last word here.
Yeah, no, I just, again, I think the most important thing is know yourself to lead yourself. Everyone's going to look at this tool differently through their own lenses, right? They're going to look in the mirror and say, hey, that's, this is me. And so I think the importance of the tools is, we got an assessment. We know how we're doing in these different areas. We know we want to improve them, but you got to have some tools. You have to have a simple process you go through that says, hey, as a team, we're going to care about how we manage our time. None of us want to be, burn out. None of us want to be lazy. None of us want to be bored. We literally want to work on the right stuff and do the right things for our customers, for our clients, for our families. So the reality is, I would say, know yourself to lead yourself. Use these tools as lenses and mirrors into yourself to go, all right, what do I need to do? Hey, I need some help from someone who's more strategic to help me build systems because I'm constantly fighting fires. But again, it's just a tool. The tool's not, it's really just meant to be an exercise in looking inside and going, all right, how do I want to transform? How do I want to unlock my potential? And how do we want to get our team to be both highly performing and resilient?
Yeah, that's a great last word, Mike. I will see you here next week. All right, see you guys.
That was fun. Thanks.